Hi,
How's it going?
going good.
Ah, the Germans call it a Streber.
Oh, what is that?
It's a striver is the literal translation, but what it means is somebody that wants to be first in the class.
Oh, oh,
You're here early, you know.
yeah. I do have that kind of Freudian compulsion to get here early.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I like to be on time if at all possible.
Yeah.
I showed up a little bit late for our meeting on Friday simply because out of habit, I thought it was going to start at 8.
Ah,
But my calendar sends me notifications. And all of a sudden, this notification pops up. It's like 5 minutes before or something. I'm going, oh, that's right. It's early today.
Yeah.
And it takes forever for my computer to get online.
Oh, it does.
Well,
Yeah.
my computer's always running, but when I start an application or especially this web stuff like Zoom, it just clunks and chunks, and
Okay.
I get the little spinning rainbow. I have a Mac, so I get a little spinning rainbow wheel.
Oh.
It pretends it's doing something, but all it's doing is spinning its wheels.
Oh, come on. It's warming up.
I hardly ever turn it off. I don't know why it's going to warm up. Of course, I had to boot it twice yesterday to get it to do anything.
Oh, wow.
It's getting old.
Yeah.
And I really dread the fact that I might have to get a new computer.
Okay.
I don't particularly like them. But you can't live without them these days.
Yeah.
Hi, Geoffrey.
Hi,
How you
Geoffrey.
doing?
Hi.
Hi, Geoffrey.
Hi.
In the thought, I always inherit my son-in-law's phone, so I'm right before having to redo my telephone, and I just
Wow.
he gave it to me over a week ago, and I had to get some tools. I have to get a cutter to cut the SIM to put a card in my phone card in it, because they changed the size of them, and I'll probably screw it up and have to get a new card. And then,
oh wow!
But then you have to back up all the data, and then you have to reinstall all the apps, and then I don't use a lot of apps, but the couple I use, I kind of need. But,
yeah. Hi, John.
Hi, John.
Hi.
So again, if it were up to me, I wouldn't have one, but I can't not have one.
Yeah, right.
So maybe this weekend. It's supposed to get cool this weekend. So it would be nice if it just rained one day. Just rained, and then I could just sit in the house and go, well, I don't have anything else to do. I'll do that.
Yeah. Did you write down and get the ice cream cone?
Oh, I certainly did. And it was about 95 degrees when we rode into town.
Wow.
The last week set a new heat record in Germany.
Wow.
So, yeah. We last year was hot. This year was even worse. It's really cool today. Today it was like 80 degrees, and everybody said, "Oh man, isn't this great?" It really cooled off. So, yeah.
Marco.
Hello.
Yeah, long time no see.
Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you too. Apologize for being a little bit tardy.
It's called fashionably late where I come from.
I wish I could claim that, but I've been dealing with much more, much less appealing matters. Yesterday, just as Kayla, my wife, was about to leave, she's going on a road trip now with the girls to Minnesota. She was planning to leave Monday morning, and then it's going to be a 2-week trip. They're doing family stuff. I'm exempt this time around, and I get to be home alone with our dog. But we have an old house. we have an old house, and for a few months we've noticed that there's been some water in the basement. It's just a utility basement,
Yeah.
And simultaneous to that, we've had some sewage line issues, the line that goes from the house to the sewer, with waste. And these two collided yesterday, apparently, where the sewage line became completely blocked, and then that started overflowing, not directly into the house, but through the outside of the house into the cracks in the old foundation and coming into the basement. So the basement got covered with a film of sewage water. Yeah. And Caleb, maybe 20 minutes before she was planning to leave, appeared with, to me with her face distressed to let me know that this had occurred. And she ended up not leaving, but we spent much of the day coordinating between different, service providers to get the sewage cleaned up, get the line unblocked. And then we have to do something about the structural issue with respect to the foundation. So that's what I've been dealing with. And the guy that just left like 15 minutes ago power washed the whole basement and disinfected it all. And we just decided that we're not going to do it. And Kayla's about to leave now. And maybe already out the door. We said goodbye and everything. And so I'm just bringing my attention back to the topic of the meeting. And I may need a moment to take a breath and settle in.
Yeah. Well, it's like they say, Marco, real life is hell.
Yeah, we don't need a mythical hell.
No, really. No, I don't know why you make that up. My son-in-law is having the one half of the driveway paved, and for the last 2 days, there's been a dump truck and a power shovel sitting out here in front of our house, in the driveway. And these guys have been working on it. Tomorrow they're supposed to pave it. I don't know if it'll happen or not.
It's a small problem in the scheme of things, but when you got sewage in your basement, everything else takes backseat.
Backseat.
You put that on hold. So yeah, back to reality.
Oh yeah.
But this is reality too. So how's it going? I missed the first part.
There was a first part of what?
Oh, whatever you and Michael were talking about.
Oh, we were just jaw-jacking. Yeah. I was telling them how hot it's been here lately because we've had unseasonably warm weather.
I've heard about that. And I saw images of French police pepper spraying protesters on the hottest day in recorded history in France because they were, demanding more action on climate change. So, things are heating up.
all over and in many ways. Yeah. You have to leave it to the French. They don't let the weather stop them from going out in the streets. They will go out in all kinds of weather. They're like that. They've been like that since about 1789.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting times. I started listening to your talk on the axial age. I didn't get 15 minutes into it until this guy showed up to clean the basement. And I know we're not talking about this right now, but just since you mentioned it, I read Jasper's piece, which I had heard of before. I'd never read it, where he coined the term axial age. And I think at first it might almost seem like a philosophical question only, but we tend to see history and we tend to see kind of our scope of relevance is relatively narrow. We think in terms of today or this year or this decade or maybe this century. And what I thought, to me, the most interesting point so far, which I haven't gotten deep enough into it, is taking the view that there is a single event, actually, that we're in the midst of still, that has this inauguration in the time period around 500 BCE, where there's an awakening of, in essence, humanity to humanity, or humanity to the cosmos. And that changes everything about, it changes everything, at least for us. And we're still actually living in the throes of this moment. It's not something necessarily in the past. What I see is that he sees this awakening then, but that in essence is what inaugurates the process that leads us to the present, to modern history, to the present. And so where are we in relation to that, I think, to me, is a very interesting inquiry. I know that's not where we're at, but I think the question about cosmos pertains to it. Insofar as we're trying to look at and trying to construct something with a perspective that is kind of on that order, that's more looking at the bigger picture, not necessarily just this narrow band of time that we happen to identify with, or happen to have been educated or indoctrinated into. So that perhaps, I think that there's some interesting connections and segues we might be able to make there. And other than that, Doug framed this talk with a post on the forum, and then a follow-up as well, which was very eloquent and full. It was a full post. But I have no particular agenda. I'm just here to allow what wants to arise, through me or not. I like the headphones, Michael.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah, they're fashionably.
I can't wait to see your new sunglasses.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna have to work with somebody on them. Actually, I know somebody. He was a former neighbor, and he has done like industrial design, engineering, and I thought maybe over a glass of wine or something, I might be able to pitch him the idea of designing some sunglasses together.
Yeah, I like the whole idea of how you having to tweak not only the frames but the resolution and the, bringing it, updating it. I guess
metaphorically and actually, yes, both ways. One, maybe just to throw an idea out there, because this friend, now that I'm thinking about him, he's a member of a place that's called a makerspace. Maybe you're aware of them. I don't know if they have them in Germany. They probably do in California, but they're basically collective spaces that install like high-end machinery, like 3D printers or laser cutters, and they basically just have like a room full of different kinds of tools that people typically. A good example, a furnace, like for kilning, that kind of a thing. But tools that people wouldn't have on their own, or would be too much of an investment, too cumbersome, etc. But it's a collective space where the members can use it to do their own projects. And they also offer classes, and they offer training, and they offer, just community type of activities. And I thought, well, that's a little bit like what I think Cosmos or the Café can aspire to become, or one aspect of itself is a place where people can do their own DIY kind of projects that they couldn't necessarily do alone, or not as easily.
Kind of like the community theater that John and I and Doug struck up. Did you get to see that at all?
I didn't get to see that, but tell me how that went.
Well, I feel it went fantastic. I mean, with all three of us, in the sense that with John's help and both mine and Doug's willingness to just don't give a shit. Let's try it. Kind of attitude of bringing forth that for me, it's a real important, because theater tends to ground all the senses and all the arts in a way. It's one of the more multi-dimensional aesthetics, but we went for the voice through Shakespeare, and with John's help, I think both Doug and I gained a lot of confidence of how to use the voice in terms of speech and expression. It kind of resonates with Doug putting me on the spot, because it kind of goes to, that's the kind of spot I think we need to work with here through the new medium of Zoom and virtual reality. I'm being redundant, but this medium is an extension of our own nervous system, but it's not our nervous system. It's an extension. And so the way I see that is from a concrete way of this year is 19 years since I had to operate a tractor, sitting in a tractor trying to move stones and putting them over, and I went over the top. I went over. So I kind of metaphorically draw a connection to that in the sense of using the Zoom and this technology. How can we maintain our seat and not overextend ourselves to such a point as we're sitting here and I'm talking to you through this medium that, you know, we don't end up into certain ways of being that we don't want to.
In a ditch. Yeah.
Yeah. And practically, in my case, concretely, I could have been dead or a vegetable. So
so what do you think? Yeah, I mean, I see the connection, the metaphor, like this is heavy machinery in a way. Like,
yeah, right. And from that, I think I've spent the last 20 years of understanding how metaphor, and to quote Tom Robbins, if the currency of an artist is metaphor. They're always looking for the best metaphor. And according to D.Z. Suzuki, which a quote I heard from him, and I don't want to, the quote I liked about him is that an artist uses materials outside themselves, oils and stuff. A mystic uses their own experience. I'm not a mystic, but I like that, how he set that up, is how well are we aesthetically working with our own experience, which includes our nervous system and our brain.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is a new type of an extension that we're having to learn how to operate or use. And I want to quote you with ethics, ethically too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so when John and all three of us did that, I found that one of the best encapsulated way of using this medium in a very healthy way. And I'm sure there's other people trying to do the same thing, but we did it. It was really enlivening to me to be part of that community theater online kind of thing. You have anything to say, John?
Let me see.
I heard that. I didn't know you were even on the line. I didn't see Geoffrey either.
I'm here.
So part of the framing for this, at least going by previous threads, involved Ed facilitating a conversation. I wonder if that's still the plan.
Not really right now, for one very particular reason. We kicked around a couple of things, and I was willing to torture a few unwilling volunteers for a very specific reason. And I think your situation that you brought up kind of exemplifies what I'm talking about. Somewhere in real life, you have to get the guy that cleans out your cellar because the sewage backs up, because you need whatever. And when you're going to do an undertaking, and I view Cosmos as an undertaking, there's the real bright and beautiful side of it is like, well, what is our vision? And which goes far beyond what we want to be when we grow up. But on the other hand, and this is what you've become, I think, particularly aware of, and reading some of your posts before you had to go away and before you took the trip, and now that you come back and you run into these other things, there's a whole lot about running a business which is it is in the end, because it's, you know, you want to do something and accomplish something, and it needs to finance itself, you know, that which is the real nuts and bolts, down and dirty every day. Who wants to talk about that? And what is about that we pay attention to in any way, shape, or form? So there are really there's two very different kinds of discussions. One of them exceedingly visionary, which is necessary. But once one has, I don't think you need a clear vision. I think you need to have a relatively clear vision of kind of what you want to be. But on the other hand, there has to be some way of realizing that. How do you turn that into a reality on the material plane, if you will? There's a gazillion ways to talk about that. And thinking about those down and dirty nuts and bolts kinds of things is a whole different kind of thinking, and it's not a lot of fun in the end. I've never been to a meeting or a session, and I've done these with my former business associates. I've done it with both children who wanted to, out of necessity, not out of desire, start their own businesses. And nobody that was involved ever really enjoyed it, because I personally think you have to be a really odd, quirky kind of person to find doing, let's say, financial planning over 10 years fun. because it's just, it's so different from what we normally do or how we think about things. So there's, you know, there's kind of like two aspects to this. And the things that could be done, and what also gets involved and what's also sometimes problematic is well, what do I need to do to be some kind of an organization? And then there's all of the nuts and bolts about how do I run it? We've had lots of discussions about that, especially since Doug could or couldn't be for the actual age gets together, and who was going to take over some of the technical responsibilities and things like that. All worked out well in the end, which I'm exceedingly happy about. But they are considerations that also have to be thought through. And nobody likes to sit down. Well, I don't know if nobody does. No, there are people who do. I don't particularly like to do it, but who have to sit down and think through all of those nasty details and come to some kind of an understanding of, well, this is how we are going to manage that as we move along, and those kinds of things. So there's that, what I like to call the visionary side of strategy, and then there's the reality side of strategy. And the reality side of it is just, it's hard to do because we don't normally do it. It's something that's very foreign to how we engage the world normally. And I enjoy these kind of discussions where we say, well, you know, what could we possibly be? And I understand that there's an aesthetic dimension, that it's an ethical dimension at the end. But if there's a difference between whether Cosmos, let's say, is a platform, just a platform, then is it a platform for what? Facebook started out as a platform, but it certainly morphed into something that isn't a platform any longer, either by desire or by design, I don't know, or by accident, could also very well be. And then how do you organize that? And those are just, I don't know, very mundane kind of things that are on a whole different. I hate to say the word level, but it's kind of like that. They're just in a whole different part of reality. They all impinge on each other and they all affect each other. That's true. But you know, when sometimes, you know, as much as I'm a critic of the rational structure of consciousness, sometimes you just have to sit down and analyze things. And sometimes you just have to take it all apart and try to put it together into some meaningful synthesis that you think is going to bring some results, you know. And it was getting a taste. It was about getting a taste for that. And I found it interesting, and it was certainly not a criticism of anybody. I think if it had happened any other way, I would have been more surprised than anyone else. that I don't think I want to do that right now. I'd prefer not to, which is, I think, quote unquote, the normal reaction to things like that, because we don't normally do it. We have to force ourselves to do those kinds of things. And I wouldn't want to, I was willing to spring that on a few people who seemed inclined that direction, but I wouldn't want to just spring it on people if they weren't expecting that, because it would be unfair. You have to know, and that was the point of the exercise. You just have to know it's so different than what we normally do. That's why it's a yinish kind of thing, you know.
So Marco, let me ask you kind of maybe jumping into the pool. I was on, what was it, 2 times ago with the Cosmos Vision that I came online with you and Carolyn and Doug. And I asked a question, and I'm asking it to see if there's been any resolve of how I can better, from month to month, depending on my income, go on and actually contribute money and not have any kind of overly, to me, it was too complicated. I just wanted a simple, I want to give you money. How can I get it to you the fastest? But I don't want this big, that's why I'm going off of Ed. I'm going, if I want to give money, I don't want this big algorithm, I guess would be the word. I want the most simple one. So has there been any resolve around that? Because I've been waiting to hear so that, I know that I can contribute from time to time anywhere between $30 to $50 a month, but I'm not going to take action just yet until I know that there's something in place to help me do
that. Short answer to your question is that there's been no website development specifically done to change anything as it currently exists.
Yeah.
Longer answer to the short version of the longer answer to your question is that it involves more complications than would at first appear. And for me, I have never taken any money from Cosmos.
Yeah.
People have given money and there's a bank account and the money has gone in there, and then certain expenses have been taken out of that. For example, Zoom, Infinite Conversations Forum, hosting various other experiments that sometimes I've just initiated. You don't want to know all the details.
No,
or you'd be quirky and weird if you wanted to know all the details. And what I would really like to have happen is that there is a quote unquote rational process whereby, just like in any organization, those kinds of questions as to how things get paid, how things are organized, managed, etc., are not held by myself personally. That doesn't mean I don't want to take responsibility for a part of it. Rather, just that the authority to do that should be vested in a collective. And so when the idea of doing a cooperative arose, it was because I was searching for what I thought would be an appropriate organizational structure to sustain the quality of consciousness that I saw or felt was desired and also was lacking or seriously, degraded in existing spaces. I thought we could do better. And I'm not a businessman, obviously. I try to pretend to be sometimes, but it's not my forte. However, it doesn't mean I can't do simple arithmetic or keep the books. I mean, I run, my wife, Kayla, and I, we have a household. We pay our taxes. We pay our bills. We get our sewage cleaned. We take care of things that we need to. And I think that for Cosmos to be a sustainable and for it to fulfill the potential of institutionally, organizationally, or this would be where Wilbur gets it maybe useful. we'll come back to that, that it would have some of those functions basically embedded, taken out of the personal and into the collective. And how exactly that happens has been part of the process we've been in. And I'm not too worried about the money exactly, because right now I have some paying work, we have some clients, and we have a line of credit for things like sewer lines, and also I'm aware of the fact that we live in a very thin strata of economic privilege with respect to most of the world and most of human history that I don't take for granted. I don't want to take for granted. So I'm not asking for money personally. Like I'll figure things out as much as I can. What I wanted Cosmos to be able to do is to provide at some level, but not only this, but to provide a platform where people like me who, in my particular case, but also in the case of many people I know, many peers, we're in a very volatile economy. We are struggling to find some stability and also to create better economic opportunities, like to have meaningful work rather than bullshit labor that feeds a beast that I think we can do better than. So the larger ambition for Cosmos to me would be to provide on one level, not only this, but on one level, opportunities for people to do more meaningful work and be sustained in doing that. And to me, these kinds of conversations that we have, or the other kinds of creative projects that we're incubating and developing, is meaningful work. But part of that meaningfulness is it's not tangible. It's not something I could point to and say, well, I just cleaned the sewage out of your basement. That's worth $800. Like, how do you put a price tag on a conversation or on a poem? It's a hard question, actually. And I think that's why there hasn't been as much movement like on some of the practical things. But I'm actually confident that, I know that we could, if you just want to send me money, I can make that that's not that hard. But I would rather at the time we have together, we focus on the, what we can accomplish or bring forth in this call, because we're not going to do project management or web development, or we're not going to, get a spreadsheet out and figure out just exactly how to organize it.
That's fair enough, but I also want to give back to the opportunity that you are setting up, and there seems to be a case made that we're talking about the nitty-gritty of continuing Cosmos, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
yeah, people will need to be paid to work on Cosmos to keep the plumbing.
Yeah. And therefore you have to ask for help, generosity from others. Right.
But what I would like, this is what I'm holding out for.
Okay.
This is what I'm holding out for. I would like that I'm willing to do a job and be paid for doing a job. I would prefer to do really excellent work and for people to find value in that work and then want to support me for doing it.
Well, I'm already
But I don't know if I've done
I'm already there. I'm already there.
Maybe we could open this up in a different way. I'm really, I was very reluctant to join this call because something was said about what will the group be when it grows up? Well, I'm a grown up. I've grown up. And what I want for myself is a beautiful death. What I want for the group is a beautiful death. And for that beautiful death to happen, I will need to have my feet, my bare feet, on the ground. I heard a conversation on Geoffrey Edwards was talking to a filmmaker who did a documentary on the CIA and remote viewing. And there was a remarkable story the director told. He was young. He was like in his early 20s. He was in college. He just had a fight with his girlfriend. So he was very upset. He was being very reckless. He was on a road on California, you know, right near the ocean, where it was very, lots of cliffs. And he was on a two-way, I think it was a highway or some sort of, but there were several lanes and it was icy. And he was driving way too fast and the car started to spin, which you all know is the driver's worst nightmare, to be spinning on an icy street with like 4 lanes. And there was a bank and he like prayed. He said, if I survive this, this will never happen again. And somehow the car kept spinning and it went to the side of the road. And he was very alarmed, of course, that the spinning car would hit the barricade. But the car somehow started to heat up and he felt that it was getting ready to fly. And he blacked out. The next thing he knew, he opened his eyes and he was looking at the roof of the car. He had passed out and he was looking up at the roof of the car and he realized he was in a field. The car was in a field. And he had no idea how he and the car got there. But he ended up, you know, calling for assistance and there were no roads to this field. It was quite a distance away from the highway where he had this spinning incident. And so he had to have people to come and pull his car out of this road. And there were some police there who took a report, but no one questioned what had happened, except for, of course, himself, who recognized this was quite an anomaly and did not fit into his worldview. At any rate, decades later, he's doing this documentary film on the CIA and remote viewing and, you know, really exploring the paranormal. And this is what interests me, these kinds of anomalous events. And I've had a few, nothing quite, well, yes, I have. I was going to say not quite as dramatic as the one this person reported, but actually I have had experiences just as weird. And so that's my motivation. It's basically driven by, I know we're living in the Anthropocene. We're looking at a massive die-off of many species and perhaps our own. And I'm sort of interested in the ironies of what's happening right now and the ambiguities. And I'm having a comfort zone with the ambiguous. Not that I'm not a friend of clarity. I love clarity, but it usually isn't something that shows up immediately. So I do hope that we can continue to have these interesting discourse events. I think we've had many of them where the anomalous and the weird and the uncanny are allowed. There's a lot of groups that will shut down upon this kind of phenomena. So I am very grateful that this particular, at the Café and at the Cosmos, we are allowing these kinds of weird episodes to be reported. That doesn't mean that we have a belief system that's already installed in us, or that we don't have can't take a critical approach to these experiences when they're reported. And I believe to make that happen, we need good phenomenology. And there are 2 other things that Geoffrey Kripal said. Good hermeneutics, and what was the other thing? TJ, we talked about this at the Axial event. There's three things we need. Oh, is it with history? Oh, metaphor. We need metaphor. So I'm hoping that we can continue as we have been doing, I think with some great study groups. I thought we did a great job with the Bateson, which just finished. I think the Axial Age is fascinating. We just got started on that. We did the Gebser. We've done a lot of fiction. We did Sloterdijk. We did Aurobindo. These are huge efforts, I think, to keep book culture alive. And I just want to, so my feeling is we've grown up. We're all grown-ups here. And I just want to sponsor everyone in, you know, being the best at what they're already pretty good at, whether it's a historiographer, a phenomenologist, a philosopher, a musician, a poet, whatever. And I think we're all actors, we're all performers. So I just want to take a deep and humble bow to each of you for the sponsorship I have received abundantly from this group. Thank you.
At the risk of being the guy that's always throwing the turd in the punch bowl, I agree with you 100%, John. But for that to happen, this platform has to sustain itself, which is that, and this is what I was referring to before, it's a whole different kind of thinking. And I'm not sure this is the place where that thinking should be done or could be done, because it is so different. It is really different. Michael had a good question. I'd like you to have money to put in that bank account just so that the server can, basically, so that this server that this is running on continues to run, and that we have a Zoom account that also costs some money so that it doesn't close down, or otherwise this doesn't happen. It's a very practical kind of thing, very small scale, but very real. And we all start real. And unlike John, I'm a little closer to that beautiful or maybe not beautiful death that's coming up, but I haven't grown up yet. So I'm not waiting for some moment of transformation that's going to happen. But I understand that. And the beautiful death that you might wish for Cosmos is what we did talk about briefly in our last cafe, is the exit strategy, that Geoffrey had brought up, that every business needs. You know, if you see that it's not going to work, what do you do? How do you get out? What do you do with all those people that have, let's say, contributed financially or participated in some way? How do you deal with that? And just in our conversation up until now, Marco has mentioned a couple of things, metaphorically and realistically, that is very much worth thinking about, because they may provide steps and means to get to that end, that this platform stays alive and on longer. And that's what I mean about, it's about the business growing up, not about any one of us individually. Because I'm not grown up yet, but I'm the exception, not the rule. Because the rest of us are mature adults. I'll grant you that much. And that other kind of thinking also has to happen. And it is, and I want to add this, it's distracting, you know, it is very distracting. And so I think you need some dedicated time and space to do that kind of thinking. And if you can find people that you can literally sit down and argue with in a meaningful way, to at least get clear on what you're going to do. You know, the issue of publishing has come up, for example. A very noble and honorable goal. How do you get there? How do you manage to do that? You know, Geoffrey's putting some thought into this on you know, very practical thinking into this on the one hand. He's also very familiar from his own background, what's involved in that. We're getting a taste of this with metapsychosis when people do submit things and you're asking people to respond. I have absolutely no problem doing that for nothing, simply because, as quote unquote, an anonymous referee of sorts, why should I? It's in my interest that things like this appear. So I'm happy. Now, there are other people who may eventually like to, like your friend who started this do-it-yourself shop where they can add classes and they can help people get to do things and provide tools that you otherwise wouldn't have. I found that was a very useful analogy that you put on the table that probably needs to be talked through and thought through in a very practical way. So that is something that could happen, but that needs to happen specifically in that way and for that purpose, I think. This is where I think that sometimes it is simply a good idea to separate things. You know, take that really rational, this has nothing to do with that. What are we going to do over here? And then later it can always be integrated into the larger picture that you have in the back of your mind anyhow. That's, to me, is the purpose of that vision. So those are that's the, let's say, the countercurrents that are underflowing and actually running through our current conversation. And I hate to say it, it would be my advice to Marco, but unfortunately, I think it's for better, not for worse. You and Caroline are sitting there having to stew in all of this, but the stewing must be done, as well. And I say that not as a criticism, but as an encouragement to stew every once in a while. Really stew in the brew you don't want to be stewed in. I hated it when I did it, but I had to do it. So, okay, you do it. Of course, I was in the military. I hated it, but I had to do it. So, this too shall pass kind of thing. But on the other side is that when things are moving along, you have something to fall back on that you've thought about and that you've internalized and made part of yourself. So that I think you tend to make more right than wrong decisions. Which is what you want to do, because anytime you're starting anything, and we're still in the startup phase as far as this platform is concerned, if we want to call it that. I'll just call it that for lack of a better word right now. We're still in infancy. We're still right at the very beginning of all of this. And as we all know, pre-taught babies need a lot of attention, unfortunately. But any parent that's had a baby in the house knows you spend a lot of time with that individual doing a lot of things you don't want to do. A lot of them are smelly on top of that, and that's the same way with any undertaking that you have in life. It is like raising a child. So
yeah, and therefore there's an underlying current that I'm going to just give name for, of the anxiety that comes with the natural. How do I help this child grow up? How am I attentive, and how much time is my attention being with the child and being there for them, and at the same time trusting other people to take care of the child so I can do things I need to do too, so that I'm not lost in caretaking. I mean, some people are better at that in terms of child raising. I'm just going to speak up as a male. I'm very proud that I was very interactive with my children, but it did take away, and I don't regret it, but I know it took away from other things I wanted to do. But I had set my attention to that this was important. But to me, that has an aesthetic of its own. There's an aesthetic of its own of taking care of those small details with your hands and doing that dirty work. But I come from a maintenance background, and following DT Suzuki, if I smelled shit emptying a chemi toilet, well, how can I make this beautiful? How can I serve think of this, I'm serving the people, or, give it not a beautiful aesthetic, but a sense of, well, I'm in the mix. I'm doing it.
Yes, I hear you. And I've emptied cans and I've changed diapers of adults who are, who are going through that death process. And believe me, those are some of the most heartbreaking and terrifying moments a person can have, especially if you're in a relationship with someone that you are attached to. Mm-hmm. And I have not change the diapers of many babies. I wish that was not a gift that was given to me in this lifetime. Maybe another lifetime I will. I did change the diapers of my little brother. He was a baby. And a few others I had chances to babysit. But I definitely been in those extremes. So and appreciating the details and the simple, sometimes very simple gestures, and being able to catch the rhythm of another person has galvanizing effects for both persons. And some persons who were in very extreme states, with dementia or with cancer or some other, or maybe a cognitive disability, it is really a wonderful thing to be a skill to be able to enter into rapport. And I believe that's a skill that many of us could cultivate better. It is something that you tend to, these kinds of events sort of are thrust upon you. It's not something I think that you would go to graduate school to study. And that's where my frustration has often been, especially in the arts, because most of this is subsidized by the artist, although the contributions that artists make are enormous to culture. And some of the frustration with these platforms is the algorithmic nature of social media, the market incentives, the price fixing, the licensing, the so-called innovation that's happening seems to be, largely based on the gathering of certain kinds of data. And I think, as Nora said, she was longing for a warm data rather than the data that just seems to be fixated on people's consumer habits. So those are the kind of things that, to me, have much more of that algorithmic cracking the code kind of dynamic, which I find is very different from catching the rhythm of those that you're in a dynamic discourse event, co-creating together. So I'm not a whole lot interested in normalizing this group so that others can feel more comfortable. I understand that may be something others are interested in, and I'm fine with that, but others have other interests than I do, or priorities or values than I do. But I do think it is widely shared, this aesthetic, the aesthetics of relationships. I believe we have been cultivating over the last 2 years, is it? It was TJ and Marco, we were the first ones, right? To start up this particular cafe. The Cosmos had been going on already. But I think it's a really tribute to that initiative, and that enough people showed up and continue to show up. And I'm here for those who show up, rather than trying to create the conditions for those who don't show up to feel more comfortable. That's sort of, but I come from I'm very queer-centric. I love the weird and the loony and the unusual and the odd. I open and embrace those persons, so that those who, don't want to, who have a real defense around making public certain private areas of their lives, I certainly support that you should protect yourself. And I think we all do a pretty good job of making our personal stories or anecdotes that we share relevant to our group and to the group evolution. I don't know if that's the right word. But at any rate, I hope to hear from everybody here, TJ, and I haven't heard from you, Geoffrey. So I'm really looking forward to what your contributions might be. Thank you.
I'm not sure I have a lot to say. I seem to be quiet today. Mostly buried into my fashion design work right now. So um, I mean, I sort of see, I can relate to Ed, what he's saying about business plans. Oh, I've done that too. And you're right, it's horribly boring to do, even though you know it's important. It's very hard to sit down and work it all out. It's the sort of meticulousness of it, I think, that is difficult. And I relate to Johnny and the sort of idea that, hey, what we've got is great, but we all know that a lot of what we do sits on Marco and to some extent Kayla in the background. And that if Marco at some point decided this wasn't of best service for his life, we would be in trouble for the whole thing. So there is an issue, I think, in terms of finding a way to make it more sustainable and not so dependent on particular individuals. That's a preoccupation that I have.
Although I would just insert there that it would probably take my death to require that kind of negotiation. I don't see myself not.
Yeah, I understand that, but I do think it makes sense for us because, you know, and we've done a lot. Doug's done a lot of work to sort of help on carry some of the load, so that it's not all on your shoulders, Marco. And others of us have done bits of that to do that. But I do think we need to do more that way, the more that we can. And and we had this idea that because we love this so much, it's like I sit there and I wonder, well, why aren't there more people coming and being involved in it? But we also know that it's a very quirky way of doing things, and there's a kind of learning curve to get into it. We've got Andrew, who's sort of inching his way into it right now, and Michael, you also were a latecomer, more recent into this process, and it's not an easy thing to go through, because it is very engaging, right? So, so it's like either you're all in or you're all out kind of thing.
Oh, very true. Very true.
It's hard to be in a middle light ground. We have a number of people who are involved on a lighter way, but they don't carry the site, not in the same way that those who are into our necks carry the site. So, and I'm not sure. Maybe that's just a property of the way the site works, the whole concept works. It's either an all in or an all out kind of thing. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's not exclusionary. Like
no, it's not that you.
Andrew brought up the issue of and that there's not that inviting females, and I think I this issue of whether comes down of inclusion and exclusion. Well, people need to want to show up. That doesn't mean you're excluding them. They just don't have a flair for it. Some people.
Well, and we had like the Aurobindo exercise, which brought in a wider group of people.
Okay.
Than the sort of main group. But they didn't stay. They didn't stay and get involved in other parts of the site.
Okay.
The way we do.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know what this means for the long time. All I'm doing is sort of stirring over the issues because they're important to me, but I don't know what the answers are, But I do think it is an ongoing concern. And a little Ed says the kind of concern that we have to put our noses in the shit from time to time. I mean, not because it's shit, because it's not, but somebody has to shovel the coal into the furnace in order for this thing to move forward, right? And this, to some extent, is about how do we keep shoveling the coal into the furnace, right? And you got to have those kinds of discussions, or some point somebody's going to stop shoveling the coal and the whole thing's going to slow down, right? So
yeah, there's a certain, feet on the ground maintenance from my perspective, because that's where I come from. I come from a maintenance perspective, but I have also been involved with, as a maintenance person, been involved and had this constant dialogue with the visionaries too. When I worked for Parks and Recs, we were constantly in conversation of, well, what maintenance needed to be heard in terms of how they wanted to change the park or what they wanted to do and stuff, because they were going to build it and they want people to come. Guess who was going to build it? The maintenance people, And so I've been in this kind of dialogue for a long time, and it always is difficult, but I just try to bring, from my experience, bring the fact that both are needed. Both are needed.
And like you, Michael, I also have been a little bit champing at the bit to contribute funds to so I did. At the beginning, there was a mechanism for it through Cosmos Co-op site, but it seems to have dropped. Then I thought I saw something on Patreon, but it seemed to disappear very quickly.
We'll come back to this for sure. The specific mechanism.
Because I can contribute funds now, but I'm in the process of retiring, and I'm not sure I will be able to do so at the same rhythm for the long term. So I would rather be a little bit like Michael said, kicking in a sort of $30 to $40 a month now, so that it goes into the system. Even if it goes into a bank account, sits there for years, at least it's there to be used. If the thing falls apart and somebody has to pick up the money, that doesn't, for me, it's once it's gone, so I don't want it back. It's not like a share, where I want the money back, buy out the shares. It's not that kind of thing. So
I promise to work on this. Actually, this one part, because it's part of also what will enable us to take the next step.
And the more
if we have
people
money,
we attract, the more people will be interested, because like Michael says, you want to pay in for what you take out. And what I take out of this thing has changed my life from A to Z, Wow. So I'm all there for giving back. If I can figure out ways to do that in as effective way as possible,
Well, and to use a clumsy metaphor, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Let me just say one thing before maybe TJ could chime in, and that's in terms of personal expectations. Do with this what you will, reject it, twist it, accept it, whatever. I don't really look to you. I'm not really looking to this group here specifically to shovel shit. I think that you're all at your best in doing exactly what you do, which is to read, discuss, question, think, wonder, write. What I would like to be able to do is for others to hear it, and also to be able to do it themselves, and have an easier means by which they could engage in conversations and in other kinds of cultural and spiritual activities that are supportive of not just a death, but also a rebirth. I think that we have to die in order to take the next step. And part of what we're working with is the volatility of those death energies and the creative energies that I think are being spawned from this process that we're in, this axial turning. It's actually a churning and a turning. I have not dived as deeply yet into this text, so I'm going to pause on going deeper into that. But just the note that I want to make is that we're not promoting this. We're not selling it. And so in a kind of wider ecology where everything is being promoted and sold, it's not going to get as much attention as other things that are more polished are or would be. And I think that that's okay, because that has allowed the conversation to take the shape that it has. It hasn't been forced into a product model, into a market model. And that doesn't mean that it's wrong to be in a product model or a market model, or that different models can't coexist. But what I have avoided doing, I hope effectively, although, sometimes not always with the clarity that I would like, avoided kind of prematurely committing to a model that would recapitulate structures or patterns that we want to disambiguate from, or I would want to disambiguate from, on the kind of more meta historical scale of things. And so I think it's really important that we have the philosophical conversations, because for me, they're not just philosophical. They're actually informing the practical. Like, we could shovel, coal into the furnace, but the furnace could be powering any number of things. We want it to power the kind of reality that is desirable. Like, I'm thinking about my daughters, I'm thinking about, generations. And I want Cosmos to be here for them. I want them to have the opportunity to enter into relationships with other people, economically, aesthetically, and pragmatically, that are nourishing and beneficial and not extractive and degrading to their humanity or to their divinity. So that's the motivation. And like, what I would like, in my fantasy world, like, there'd be a kind of collective intelligence that allows the individuals in that intelligence to most fully express themselves, but also to be coherent with a whole. And so if we could continue doing what we're doing and evolve it or iterate it in a way that allows others to participate, and then for a larger kind of collective to figure out, because there will be more, as more people get involved, people with different skill sets will get involved. People who are really, for whom it's really easy to do system administration on a web server. It takes me weeks to learn it, figure it out, Google this and that, and it's not my thing, but I do it because somebody's got to get the server, working. But there's other people who definitely could do it much better, faster, cheaper than I can. So if they also just happen to be good at that and want to talk about, Peter Sloterdijk or Octavia Butler or whoever else we're reading, that would be ideal, because then they're really getting something out of it on one level and able to contribute back to it on another, and it's synergistic in that way. That would be an ideal outcome for me, or way for things to move forward. And just as I conclude my remarks, TJ skirts off the screen.
That brings me to a larger understanding of your vision. So thank you.
Sorry to be half participating in this thing. Oh, goodness. What are the short-term threats to this vision that you just...
Can you turn up your volume? I can barely hear you.
Sorry. How about now?
Can you guys hear him?
Is that better? No.
A little higher.
You sounded great at the axial age. So
Yeah.
if the settings have changed, you should change them back.
I didn't change anything.
Stand closer to the microphone.
About now.
I can hear you, but it's just very faint. But go ahead, TJ. We'll tune in.
Thank you for your patience.
I can hear you.
What are the threats to the... Marco just put a vision out there. What are the threats to that? What are the immediate threats to that? And then what are the long-term threats to that?
Really, like, death is an. I mean, I say that half flippantly, but half seriously. Like, I'm if I were to die, nobody would have the passwords. Like that would be a problem, right? Eventually, somebody would need the passwords. So for me, having a kind of body, a council of some kind, who was the most, and I would consider you all in this league, trusted. Not that they need to access them, but just that they could. And then at that point, then you find somebody who knows something about, you know, web server admin or whatever. And that's not a big deal because there's plenty of them out there. But that would be the immediate thing that I worry about. And I'm not doing anything particularly risky, but you know, the world is risky. So that's all I worry about. Economic, you know, calamity, which I think is coming, requiring, you know, me to just spend a lot less time because I'm struggling to make money. That would be the other. But that doesn't stop anybody else. I mean, as long as the expenses are being paid, and they're not that high for just the bare bones. I can't, you know, I'm going to say let's say less than $500 a month. And could be even less than that because I pay more just to have good tech support, you know? So that's it. That's what I would say as far as immediate actual threats. And then the same for any of us. I mean, any of us, I kind of feel like, well, that's all I'll say.
Okay. So is this better? Okay. A little bit better.
It's about the same. It's a little bit better. A little bit better, I think.
Yeah.
What are the...
That's a lot better.
Okay.
I don't know what you did, but that's a lot better.
I didn't do anything.
Thank you, TJ.
Technology strikes again, right? Okay, so so maybe the short-term threats are not necessarily economic. How about to the philosophy of the place? Is there anything that really stands out that's hindering either the short-term or the long-term vision for this place as a conversation piece, as a potential blog holding piece, you know, stuff like that?
Quick reply on that. Let others, you know, chime in, but I think the thing about women being involved is important. Something about, I think it's interface, and I think I don't know what it is exactly. It's because there are women who are involved, Caroline, Bridget, Wendy, Kayla, there's various, but something about the cafes specifically, or the video conference, but no, because women do Zoom video conferences. That's absurd, right? So what is that? I'm curious about that, and I don't actually have an answer to that. I would see that as potentially like a problem.
I have a cautionary tale to tell. I worked in a gay organization, and there was a controversy there. I told this before, and I'll tell it again because it was such a kind of strange experience. There was a lesbian group that met at our facility, and they put a sign on the door of the conference room that said, "No man-made pussy is allowed." So I was thrust into the role of, as an organizer coordinator there, someone who was responsible for maintaining the equilibrium of the organization. I had to let them know that, you know, as lesbians, you've been discriminated against. And now you are discriminating against another group of people. And the organization that is sponsoring you will not allow discrimination of any kind. So what are we going to do about this? And I'm just not, I don't want to go into details, but I think these are the kind of tensions and stresses that sometimes come out of nowhere, take you by surprise, because there's nothing in the manual that's going to dictate what the procedure is here. And I also found in groups, once I was invited to join a group, and I was very interested in, you know, the dynamic that was going on, but I was sort of scolded by the person who invited me into the group for some of the comments that I was sharing that I thought was, you know, I was being responded to in a very favorable way, except from this one person who is the person who invited me into the group. And I said, well, what's up? You know, because I knew him outside of the group. And after just quizzing him a little bit, I found out that his motivation for this group was to find a girlfriend. That's what he really wanted. So he wanted lots of hot babes showing up at this group. And so I just noted that. And I realized why he kept that a secret from me. You know, because I would not be inspired to join a group to satisfy that motivation. Although it's fine with me if you have those kinds of, that's what you want for yourself, that's great. But it isn't necessarily something that you should expect me to comply with. And that's happened to me many times, where people in politically charged situations, you know, they have a cause that rallies them, and they're attracted to supporting others in that cause. But of course, people, you know, get erotically charged by those experiences. And so we just have to accept that. But I think the great thing here is, you know, we're sort of in cyberspace. And there's certainly personalities involved. But I'm extremely, when we want to have a quota, I'm a little bit like worried about that. It would be great if everyone who showed up here was free of homophobia, sexism, racism, ageism, but there's no guarantee of that. I would love it if everyone was integrally informed, but I don't think that should be a prerequisite for participating either. So that's why I think we shouldn't attempt to be a free, you know, equal opportunity employer. I think if you are an employer and you're looking for employees, that's, there's certain legal guidelines you have to obey. You have to comply with, or you can be sued. So I think those are the kinds of, so that's why I'm just registering a big question mark and acknowledging I have a very phobic response to you know, the men have to change their behavior so that the women will be more comfortable. I'm definitely do my best to be a gentleman and a kind person to everybody. I don't always succeed. Sometimes I get grumpy and grouchy and I get pissed off, but I do my best. And on my best days, you know, I don't believe I'm sexist, racist, or ageist, but you know, there's no guarantee that will always be the case. So I think we should all be open to the fact that we all have our blind spots. But that's where I'm just wanting to put that out there because I've worked in organizations, gay organizations that went from being gay to be gay and lesbian, to being gay, lesbian, bisexual, to being GLBTQ. And I've worked with lots of ethnicities. I worked in an organization that primarily was taking care of people with AIDS, which included a lot of straight people. So I had a lot of clients who were heterosexuals who called me faggot, but they were still my client. And I had to let them know, you know, you can take a number and you can sit down. We'll get around to this. But I'm letting you know about you're in a different culture than if you're working for social service for the city of New York. This is a privately funded organization funded primarily by gay men. And I think that's something that a lot of persons had a lot of trouble with. So I've been in these kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't dynamics. And I would call them binds and double binds, and perhaps even triple binds. And I believe they're in every organization. And they can split organizations apart. Because if you're saying something to the public and then you're doing something privately, that's causes discrepancies with that public image, then I think that often can split in a schizophrenic way an organization. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. And I'm certainly not an expert here. But I think that the study of binds and double binds is front and center in my attention, primarily because we did this with the Bateson Call just recently, the conference, which is basically what Bateson and Nora and Gregory were all about. They were studying binds and double binds and social organizations and culture. So I think it's a lot of interesting research around this. So anyway, I'm just putting that out there. Thank you for your patience with my attempt to articulate this stuff that's very hard to talk about.
Well, I just want to say that I view this platform or cafe as totally open to whoever wants to show up. I think there's something about it that will only draw a certain kind of person, whether you're whatever you want to say, gender, on whatever spectrum. This is a unique platform that I think only certain percentage of people are willing to participate in. And that's just the way I view it. I mean, I spent 2 months kind of doing my thing and checking out exactly these details that John just articulated. And I got a feel for that okay, yeah, they're really being open without attempting to exclude anybody. But yeah, shit comes up, and sometimes it's just personalities, period. And we've shown ourselves through recent times that we've even done, I feel, a pretty good job of doing the hard work, working through it. So, but I just want to say that it's just it's an interest of why Cortina, and we don't know, but why Cortina hasn't come back or some of the other females participated. I mean, the young lady from England was there. Now, a lot of that, I think, also part of this is life getting in the way. So I don't want to exclude that. I don't want to exclude that. Life gets in the way.
And Lisa, who's participated on the many Café, I just saw her. She visited me in New York. She's busy. Yeah. She's got a job, and I'm sure that's true of most. That's why TJ, I'm sure, doesn't show up except on this special occasion today. Glad to see you. But I'm sure he would show up more often, but you have to work. So we have to be sensitive to that. Thank you.
Yeah. And I also, I didn't mean to exclude other women who do participate, just not on video and not, or not sometimes by text on the forum. Like, people have their own preferences.
Yes.
And this is a particular format, actually, and we are also assuming, even at the time of day, like at least in North America, when it occurs, that you don't have a day job, right? Or you work from, like I do, I work from home. So this enables, I'm able to make it. But sometimes, and more recently, it's been harder because of the economic pressures and because I've been trying to get some stability in that regard. So yeah, I appreciate the caution around that because one, it could be unfair to the women who are participating to suggest that it's not women friendly or something like that. But it is interesting just about as media extensions, I wonder about that. I wonder, are there, like, what makes certain forms of interactions or certain interfaces more preferable to certain kinds of people or others? And that's just an open question, probably not that relevant or fruitful here.
Is that based on personal aesthetics? I will not go to Fox News. that fucking aesthetics I don't want to see. You know, if I do, it's just to check in to see if they're still ratting in a way that I'm going, get over it. You know,
a lot of the women who've come in have come in for specific events, specific series. This, you know, the Erin Manning, we had a number of women involved in that. Katrina came for the Octavia Butler reading, and I suspect if we had something like that, she might well come back again. You know, it has to do with
the transsexuals.
what?
Have we had any transsexuals visit us? How would we know?
Yeah, how would we know?
Yeah, that's a good question too.
I think we're getting into gender. We're getting gender troubles right away. It's a very slippery slope.
I'd like some extraterrestrials to join us. Announced or unannounced.
The kind like Stuart.
How would you know? How do you know we're not there? They're not there. I didn't take Andrew's comments as anything other than an observation at the moment. And all of the issues that surrounded it have actually been addressed. And we should not ever underestimate simply the time slot. You know, there's lots of things I would love to do, and I'd love to do on these platforms, but I am just physically not in a position to be there when it happens. Now, I just happen to be personally not always in a position to be able to look at the video later and react to that as if I had been there. I can't do that on top of the other things that I have to do. I don't know how it is with the other retirees here. Geoffrey's getting ready to, but I've never had less time in my life since I retired, because everybody has a demand on my time. Everybody. Before that, everybody goes, oh, well, Dad's got to work, or, Opa's got to do this or something. And so I was given a lot of free space that I will openly admit I took, not advantage of, but used to my maximum benefit so that I could do a lot of things that I otherwise wouldn't have been able to do. So, if I think back to the Gapser reading that we had, what was that? Well, that was back in, we were still chiseling on stone tablets when that took place, I think. That was so long ago. But didn't we have a person from Australia there? And yes. And when you
it was January 2016 we started that.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, well, like I said, back when we were still chiseling on tablets. Anyway, it's just a huge gap. But that person, and if I recall, it was also a woman, just named, just on the side, but made this effort because of what it was we were talking about. That was enough to draw. And this is the point that, Geoffrey also made. Sometimes it is the topic. Sometimes it, and you never know if you come up with an idea, is this going to do it or it's not going to do it? You only find out when you do it. The proof of the pudding's always in the eating. But in internet terms, and this is also, I think, something that needs to be kept in the back of your mind, we're not talking about America, and I don't say that degradingly. I just say that because all you guys happen to be over there on that continent, but not everybody's on that continent. And so the Aurobindo was a topic, and it's amazing how many I'm going to call us continentals showed up for that. And it was put at a time where continentals could be there as well. DeVore went out of his way to make sure that he could, get together with you guys, because it wasn't a convenient time for him. That's for sure.
It was 2 a.m.
Yeah, I know. Tell me about it. I know. I do. I see the little calculation that the system puts up for us, and I'm going, I don't know. I got to do a whole lot of thinking about whether or not I can be there from 4 to 6 in the morning. I mean, it's not like I've never been awake from 4 to 6 in the morning. I spent most of my adult working life getting up at 4 in the morning. But I don't do that anymore because the rhythm of my life has changed. And so it's shifted a little more into what I call normal people hours, you know, so, where, you know, people are out and about. And that is really a contributing factor, but it's a time thing as well. You see, that's why I put it out. It's not just that you guys might meet for a reading, or that you and some other group might meet for a reading that I find exceedingly interesting, but if you have a very active group, for example, the Octavia Butler group was a relatively active group. Well, sit down and read 50 posts after watching a 2-hour video, and consider what that time is. Well, in that time, I'm not reading when I'm reading, and I'm not getting ready for the axial age group that we're getting together. One of the things I do like about the cafes is that from time to time, when we do have a reading, it's something short, sweet, that I can get my head halfway wrapped around with, so I don't come across as a complete idiot when we show up, and we can talk about it at a time that I'm available to be there. So a lot of the reasons that the cafe is as the cafe is has nothing to do with any of us at all. It's just simply that this is how the world is structured, and we have to deal with that as well. And we are speaking to a global, actually a global audience. You know, if I put it in business terms, you know, the market is the world. It's not just somewhere else. Yet, when my daughters were doing their business about teaching English language in companies, it was very easy. It was the Stuttgart area. We could take a map, draw a circle, and go, that's it. There's the world, and we could think about it in those terms. But if for IC, you take a map, you get a globe, and go, oh, well, it's the world. And it doesn't really help you, you know, because there are, you know, 24 time zones when you get right down to it. So that, you know, those are also factors that play into this and have an effect on what happens. And I think what our little discussion right here and about this aspect of it has shown, this is much more multifaceted than it started out to be. And if we keep at it, it's going to get even larger. So we may want to, you know, rein that in a bit, just so that we can handle it. So, you know, you can't be everything to everyone all the time, nor should one be. I do think that if anyone is interested in having honest and open discussions about sometimes weird, odd, or controversial topics, anybody can look at a cafe and be scared away or enticed. You know, I've challenged my other son, my youngest son-in-law, to just log on once and look and see what I'm doing there if he's concerned about all my time online. I said he ought to do that. You know, I'll visit him in the hospital afterwards. He hasn't watched one yet, you know. So, okay, well, it's your choice. And just don't get all worried, you know. Grandpa's handling it, kind of.
That is a good point, Ed, that the thing that the cosmos has gotten wider than it was, right? So there was a time I could follow all the conversations, and that day is gone, and I've given up on even trying to do that.
Yeah.
There are too many conversations going on to keep track of them all. So I've learned to focus in on the things that matter to me and to drop the other ones, even though I think they're probably really important, but I can't do them all. Which is a good thing. I think that's a good sign that the platform is expanding.
I think that is a good sign as well.
Maybe twice as big as when I joined, you know, something like that. But, you know, so maybe we're doing something right.
I was going to chime in with, I'm going to be a pain in the butt and keep asking philosophical questions. The benefits to things continuing pretty much as they are and the drawbacks to things continuing as they are would be what?
Well, I mean, to me, the benefits by things as they are, I take it to mean operationally. and financially on those terms, and on the good, what the conversations
Just
as well.
Continuing, right? The conversations as they're continuing, the kind of
Yeah, I mean, the benefit is I think the continuation of the conversations. The drawback is it takes a lot of time and energy, and it could be done so much more efficiently. There's a lot of, to me, the distraction factor of undone maintenance, or poor design. That to me is a big problem. Like, that is exhausting, is when it's hard to schedule things, when you have to go through 5 steps to do something which elsewhere might just take 1 step, actually, but you don't want to be there, that elsewhere. I mean, anybody can get on Facebook and message each other and have videos and do all that. So could we replicate, to me, I'd want to replicate just the basic expectations people have around online interaction. Like, we don't even meet standards in certain ways around like accessibility and ease of use and navigability and things like that. I think all that could be brought, the benefits of changing would be that things get a lot easier. And then I think it's always going to be hard to read a text and have a meaningful discussion about it. And I don't think we should make that easier. Like, that's just is what it is. And if you don't want to do that, then, well, I mean, there could be other things you do. It doesn't have to be that that's the only thing you do. But there is, I think, some kind of orientation toward seriousness, in the sense, not in the sense of, just in the sense that this is, that like existence as such, or being, like, there's a relationship to being that I don't want to turn into a consumer product. Like, I think that we have to keep that open, keep that clearing. And the benefit would be that we make it easier so that we stop blocking people who otherwise would be there with us, but for these very ordinary reasons or not. And in whatever way serves them, really. It doesn't have, in whatever way makes their lives better, and the ripple effects that would that would entail. That would be my take on that.
What would be practical steps that people who are committed to the success of this, whatever it is, can take to make the technical side of it easier?
I had one quick thought, but probably it's been done before, I don't know, but we've never tried audio only discussions. And we know there are people in the periphery of the site who are shy about the video. So it might be worth looking into some sort of discussion that is done audio only. And it's less technically demanding as well.
I'll confess I probably won't show up for that, but I understand people do love that podcasts. And I think it has a lot to do with driving culture, and I don't have a car, so I'm never in a car. But I know that's a time saver for a lot of persons in cars. They like to listen to podcasts. I do enjoy a podcast, but that's not why. And I think you've done some podcasts. You've done some interviews, Marco. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you did a whole series of podcasts.
With we did one.
Yeah, you did a podcast.
That was the first clean language session we did.
That's right. And I enjoyed that. But for my purposes, and I'm a student of discourse events, the videos are ideal. And then I get the benefit of the forums. So it's what the speech and the writing, and the interplay between writing and speech is of great interest to me. And of course, speech with gesture and the face and rhythm, catching that rhythm in a group is extremely challenging. And I think that's what I think is so great about this. I worry. Just as a side note, this is sort of a tangent, but I think it's related somehow, about tasks and relationships. And I think these are good questions, TJ, that you've asked, because I find that tension about maintaining high quality, lots of attention, those kinds of relationships with the tasks that go along with that. And some of the events that I've coordinated and they've happened, what happened backstage is exhausting for me. You know, just scheduling someone, an intercontinental call. It's like, well, are you available this day? Okay. You available this day? No. Okay. Well, let me see if she's available. Oh, are you available for this? No, you're not. Oh, she's not available for that. I mean, hours of this kind of scheduling thing. But I also see the tasks are important to get these, and you have to have deadlines. You have to say, oh, this has to be done by this, or it's not going to happen. This event's not going to happen. So I think we need to cultivate both aspects of our natures, the task orientation and the rapport skills that are needed to maintain high quality attention. I don't know how many persons you can do that with in a call. And I think that's has a lot to do with how many people show up. It's like, well, but the more people show up, the less time each person is going to have to get the attention. And we all need attention. And I think we all need a high quality attention. And how much of that can we give or receive as the groups get bigger? So I think there's a natural sort of limitation to our capacity to pay attention to a group. And on another note, so these are the kind of things I'm interested in, but I think my experience with podcasts work really well with as a duet. When you have two voices, you can just close your eyes and go into that world with those two voices. But when you have more than two voices, it becomes a strain for me. And I also, you know, but having said that, there are certainly exceptions, but there was something else I want to say. Oh yeah, about what I noticed about technology and the invasive nature of the algorithmic. Because I've noticed 20 years ago, there were about 20 gay bars in my neighborhood, within walking distance from my neighborhood. There are many more gay bars than that in the city, and I could walk from bar to bar any night of the week, and it was packed until 4 a.m. And I mean, bumper to bumper. And people were talking. They were in your face, and people were having erotic hookups for sure. That was a large motivation for most people. But there were old people there. There were the elderly, and they were often the counselors. And you would see like a young person and an elder person next to each other at on bar stools, having philosophical conversations. And that's all gone. And I saw it as soon as I saw the people with their devices and their faces lighting up in the glow of their device, and they weren't paying hardly any attention to who was next to them or across the room from them. I think that there's a dynamic that really, and now of course, most gay bars have gone. The few that are open, they're empty. Many nights, you put your head in and there's no one there. The elders are not being sponsored. What they have to give once their beauty fades is hopefully a little bit of wisdom and a little bit of kindness. And so I really feel sorry for the younger people who are not getting that, because I see young people, gay men especially, who need very much an older man giving them a blessing. They've been deprived of that. And I think that's a sad thing that they don't get that. And I think they were getting it. I was getting it when I was a younger man. I was sponsored by older men who, you know, were very supportive. So I'm just saying that now it's much more of a hookup online, videos, you know, gay men exchange a video. They list their preferences. This is what I like in a man. This is what I want. And I think that's really bad for culture. Just to turn in these techno hookup things. So, and that's my spiel, because I just see what, for me, was a really thriving cultural exchanges that were happening, and we're making big changes in aesthetic relationships beyond just the gay collective or community or whatever you want to call it. And there's certainly a lot of talent out there, and I hope it's getting getting the support that it needs, but I worry. I really do. And I think there's a lot of talent here and a lot of talent that's just not being supported. So that's my thing is like, what kind of support do you need to make any of the things that you want to happen? And that's going to be, we're all limited to what kind of support we may give. It may be monetary, but it also may just be, I'm really paying attention, exquisite attention to everything you say. Where are you going to get this? Almost nowhere, except in maybe a therapist's office, and you have to pay them a lot of money to listen to you. So that's where I feel like I hope I can make a contribution, is I can listen carefully and attentively and receive that from others. It's a glorious win-win, reciprocity, I think, happening. So whatever we can do to make that happen, I just want to be, how can we support that? And that may be surprising. Some people, the kind of support they need, they may not even know what that is because no one asks them what that is. So anyway, that's one of my challenges too. What would you like to have happen? I've had people, I had a person who burst into tears being asked that question because she said no one had ever asked that of her before. What do you want to have happen if you've never had anyone ask you that and you've stopped thinking about it because no one ever sponsored you? It can be a real traumatic thing for someone to ask you what you want. So I'm just putting that out there. Thank you.
I'd just like to piggyback on that, John. You don't have to be gay to have gone through that experience or to know. I live in a community that's made up of 7 villages. And before 1972, they were 7 separate villages. The smallest of them has 98 people in it, and the largest of them has about 1,000. In the village I live in right now, which is about, 350 people, there used to be 2 gast houses here in this village. There was one at this end of town and one at the other end of town. So the people that were on this end of town went to the one on this end of town, and the one on the other end of town went to the other. In the village where there was just 98 people, and this was the thing I learned when you first came to Germany, if you want to know where the gast house is in a town, look for the church steeple because it's right across the street. And there was always a gast house across from the street. So that's where people went. They went to church, they went to the gast house. And they were generally the center of town. And when you went there, there were people of all ages. Since alcohol was treated as a food in Germany at any rate, it's not a recreational beverage. It's not unusual to send your kid over. You used to be able to do this in New York City, I know. You get a pitcher, you get down to the bar, the guy would fill the pitcher and you could take it home, all right? Well, the person that goes down to get the pitcher has to be 21 these days, or 18 in New York as it was at the time. But over here, if you sent your 7-year-old kid down there with the pitcher, he'd bring it back home. That's all there was to it. You sent your daughter down to get the milk from the farmer who filled it up basically from the cow. And then you sent the kid over with the pitcher to get the beer, and then you could have dinner, you see. So it was, and if you lived in a wine growing area, you sent them down and they brought home a pitcher of wine, because that's how things went. But there were people of all ages there at all times. So there was that generational interaction. It was all face-to-face, and they were always busy. Right now in this 7-village community, there is 1 restaurant that's open some of the time. It's all gone away. It's not there anymore. And it's not because everybody's become teetotalers in this country. I can assure you they have not, okay? But it was also the case that the 14, and once you had been confirmed, you became part of what was called the Kirmesborschen. They were the young folks who put on the village festival. So from the time that you were 14 to 21, it was your obligation. It was an unwritten law that you would organize the village harvest festival each year. And you put that on, and these were big events, and every village had one. And you, as a young person, you could spend your entire summer going from one village to the next because they were all in context. They were all connected to one another. There was a network of village festival organizers, so to speak, that they could do that. That's all going away. You don't see hardly any of that anymore because we are becoming as you say, it's the glow of the screen. You can be, there's somebody sitting next to you and you're texting with somebody that's somewhere else. And we haven't learned yet. And you know, for me, it's particularly difficult because I understand it is different. You know, it's like I'd said in my letter writing thing, there was a time when all communication was different than it is today, and trying to keep up and adapt to that is an extremely large challenge, I find. But the world that we now exist in, and the one that we're thinking about, deals almost exclusively with that. And some of those things you can replace, and some of them you can't. In a village where you know everybody, my wife comes from a village of 200 people. I swear they're the same 200 people for the 800 years that it's been in existence. They just keep coming back trying to sort it out. But because its population is not varied, 200 plus or minus 10% for 600 years. So there's a huge stability there. But in a village where everybody knows everybody, sometimes what you want is anonymity. You know, you're coming from the big city where nobody knows anybody, and a little bit of intimacy is welcome. And here, the place that you could get some anonymity was down at the Gast house. So you could listen to old man Schmidt, the farmer, going on and on, because nobody else would listen to him, and you didn't have to care. But maybe you did get some gem of wisdom from him. That's part of that intergenerational thing that's going away. I remember my last trip to Hungary. I was on a train, and there was an older woman on the train. She was somebody's grandmother, and there were about 4 young men, late teens, early 20s, who sat enraptured in conversation with this woman. This was, you know, I'd never seen anything like that almost anywhere I had been. But there, in that cultural community, age was still respected. This is kind of like the old man sitting on the porch that Duggins always talks about, you know. Well, there they lived that. They still did. And if anybody had ever thought of even getting that woman a halfway of a cross look, they would have had a whole slew of young people who were just going, what are you doing? And where do you think you are? So, but all of that's changing as well too, because that group was small when I saw them. They used to be larger, I know. But it's you know, things are changing in ways that we really have, we have to do a lot of thinking about how is it that we pick up all of the pieces, because what you've said is absolutely important. Sometimes that's what we got to do, and sometimes we have to allow to be as well. You know, on the other hand, that's the only point I wanted to make, that it's, you know, it's more multifaceted and probably varied than we like to think, even though it looks seemingly homogenous when we're here online, but it isn't. Mm-hmm.
I would echo that point. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, well, just before you do, TJ, I have to hop off pretty soon because I have to be on a meeting at the top of the hour for work. And to reply to your earlier question, and also to agree with the stories and the points through the stories that Ed and John both made around culture and the kind of corrosive effects of our digital, the way that community and actual human interaction is becoming a lost art. So I agree with all that. To respond pragmatically to your question earlier, TJ, about what would help, I want to go back to a metaphor from the beginning of the call, which was of basically a DIY, do-it-yourself maker space. Because in the space, you have different tools, and people just can use them. Like, they may need some training, they may need some hand-holding, but they then, as members of that space, can go in and use them. To me, we have a bunch of tools. People could do a podcast. Anybody on the forum or connected to Cosmos, not just the people here in this group, could theoretically schedule a Zoom call, get together with a few other people, have a discussion on anything they want to. And they just don't know how. So if we could bridge the gap between the tools that are available, which we're already paying for and are mostly available, like this cafe happens once a week, there's a few other reading groups, but we're paying for 24/7 access to the Zoom line. The forum's available 24/7. There's different channels, sub-channels, like there's different things that could be done. People just don't know how to use the tools. So could we bridge from what's available to the people who might want to do something with what's available according to what they are interested in, and then let the platform expand, but then figure out how to make it so that you can focus on just really what you're specifically interested in without losing touch with the whole. Like, I think that's the key, is like not to silo and to fragment everybody, but also to provide good filters so that we don't get, just torn apart by too many streams of information, because that, I think, is could be a problem too. And I like to have a balance, and working on the balance between the online and the offline, the virtual and the physical. I really want I want to be able to harness or harvest the best of those different platforms. So I'm not going to call the physical a platform, without, and minimize some of the negative downsides of it. I think that would be the optimal outcome, is if we could integrate. So I'm so grateful for all of your, just being, and I'm going to stick around as long as I can and listen, and then I'm just going to hop off with enough time to get onto the other call, and you can keep on as long as you need to. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Marco.
I'd be happy to lead take on responsibility for doing an experiment with a group podcast, and untangling the technical issues, so to see if we couldn't make it a more useful tool for the site.
Would that include a tutorial? That's what I would need, how to use the tools.
I was thinking in terms of reading text aloud.
Okay. Great, Geoffrey. Great.
Do something.
Yeah, great.
That's a great idea.
Although I understand your point, John, about this, I think that listening, there's an art to listening that's very interesting, and I think it's actually, I love the video, but I just think that an audio only event might have a certain interest if it was focused in the right way. Yeah.
Oh, I agree. I absolutely agree that poetry, it's a wonderful thing. And I think the great age of radio was a wonderful thing as well. And maybe we could bring some of that tradition back.
Yeah.
Podcasts, and maybe that's already happening. So that's a great idea. I'd support you on that one. But I just don't want to replace the video with podcasts. I think that would be a great diminishment of our full repertoire.
Totally agree.
Yeah, I think that we have such a range of things is good. I mean, what we've kind of been, where we ended up talking about, it kind of answered some of my questions. We're building a culture, and we're using screens because we're all in different places, but we're kind of putting a cafe table back in our midst, and we're able to sit down, and we're able to give each other attention, and we're able to discuss things of interest to us, and we're able to come and go as life demands and calls us. So, I mean, in that sense, that's kind of where I was going with the, what's the drawbacks of keeping things pretty much the way they are, not keeping them where they are, but just kind of letting it build from where they are. So, I encourage, that would be great. I was thinking about podcasts. I was thinking also about blogging. We have a whole range of things we can do.
Yeah. And, as a working metaphor for me and working with this, because we're not in the same physical space, I actually consider it a type of dreaming. Because we're not physically in the same place. And because I've studied through the word, but I've tried to apply it in my day-to-day life from the Australian, I forget the name of the, they have dream time. And I also look at this as a type of engaged daydreaming, in the sense that I'm kind of being engaged with a sense of alternate flow of thinking and feeling that is not allowing myself to be distracted by the surrounding environment. It's a certain relaxation of my stress in a way.
I couldn't agree with you more, Michael. I mean, just the idea that we get together for 2 hours and create conversation, generate conversation. It's a tremendous healing effect that comes from applying your concentration in that way. And I believe it definitely enhances our intelligence, our social intelligence. I know when I go out onto the street, I'm a little less grumpy, a little more tolerant, and I'm taking with me out into the world some more ideas that I would not have had if I hadn't had these episodes with you guys. And so I think also that the idea that we're self-organizing, that the group can only learn how to do what the group knows how to do.
Yeah.
And if we learn something each session or between sessions, we add to the learning that comes. I think, you know, we all get a little more resilient, a little more creative, and the system starts to organize itself in curious ways, as I believe we've noticed in the Axial Age. It's initiated by TJ, and I had already read the book, and I was already excited about it, but I read it a couple years ago, and I've forgotten most of it. So now this is, and so we thought Ed might be interested, and so we called in Ed, and we sort of just developed it, and now I think others are joining us. Geoffrey and Michael has joined us, so I think that's sort of, it's sort of organizing itself at this point. So I think we should just continue to do more of this and do it on purpose.
Yeah, and I just want to speak to something Doug and I did on the thread. He was putting me on the spot as far as the kinesthetics or the, you know, physicality. Well, I make a practice before I get online, especially with you guys, is I take 10 minutes and I'm in my body. I know what physical space I'm in. You know, this comes out of my body work from my accident of being in a tractor, and I was distracted by a lot of emotional stuff that was going on at the time between me and my wife and stuff, and that distraction played a part in me going over the edge, both physically and figuratively. So part of the kinetics, and you guys have been really good at honoring my approach of bringing in that body along with the hermeneutics, the history, and the other, you know, the activism. But this is my expression of working with a technology, a new technology that I really feel is just an extension, but it's not our bodies. It's an extension. Our nervous system, our bodies have created this as ways to interact with the world. But if we're not careful, we take it too far. Like I have physically, you know, not paying attention, or no, not giving attention. You know, we're gonna, and we see it from time to time in different expressions. You know, the technology gets the better of us.
Well, I love this conversation. Thank you all very much.
Yeah, it's been really nice. Thank you.
Does someone want to make a summary statement before we all go?
Well, I'm glad I got to participate a little bit more than I thought I was going to, but I do have to run now.
Yeah, I also have to run.
Good to see you.
It was very interesting discussion, and as I said earlier, I think it's very useful to have this kind of discussion. I do think we made some progress, so.
Yeah.
I think so too.
I would agree.
Gave me a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Good seeing you, TJ. See you later this month.
Yeah, I hope we can work that out.
Yeah. I'm doing my homework. I'm working on it.
Yeah, me too. So.
Me too.
The book is coming tomorrow for me. I'm getting the book tomorrow.
Great.
It's just uncanny how those chapters
It's an easy
work.
read, Michael. It's an easy read. You can breeze right through. It's like reading a newspaper.
It's very well.
I don't trust you, Ed. I don't trust you.
What?
No, it's good. He's right.
Okay, I get it. I get it. I just, when Dad said something like that, I'm kind of going, he's like a little curmudgeon trying to tweak.
It's really uncanny how those chapters lined up with John's characterizations. For us.
Funny. That's funny. That I'm really in sync with that. That's great.
Yeah. Well, everybody, you have a good day, and God bless.
Okay, well, my day's over, so I'll have a good whatever.
Have a good night's sleep.
Go to Dreamland.
Blessings to everyone.
Okay,
Thank you.
care. See you later.